CROSSMARK's roots can be traced back to more than 100 years ago, to the turn of the century. In 1905, when our company was founded, it was a far simpler time. The average American earned $15 to $25 a week. There were very few cars and airplanes, no cell phones, no computers, no internet, no email, no fax machines. None of the things we take for granted today. Hard as it may be to believe, there were also no supermarkets, no discount stores, and no supercenters. 60% of Americans lived in rural areas, so stores carried the most basic groceries like eggs and milk, as well as such essentials as horse harnesses, animal feed, and farm equipment. This was the world of a young man named Willis Johnson, the son of a Presbyterian minister. After graduating from the University of Virginia at the age of 20, young Willis teamed up with E. Leslie Hunt to start a new company, Johnson & Hunt Merchandise Brokers. In 1905, Fort Smith, Arkansas was a booming town poised on the edge of a new frontier. Because it was known as the gateway to the Western Territories, Johnson & Hunt believed that Fort Smith was a great place to start a brokerage business. Unfortunately, Mother Nature did not agree. In the early 1900s, the great Fort Smith cyclone ripped through the town and basically destroyed the central business district. Fort Smith never fully recovered from the cyclone, and by 1914, Johnson recognized that the market was going to be consolidated into Little Rock, Arkansas. The move to Little Rock was a good one for Johnson's young company. Within a short period of time, Johnson garnered tremendous respect from manufacturers, retailers, and other industry leaders. In 1929, even though he was from a small market, Johnson was elected as chairman of the National Food Brokers Association. In the early 1940s, Willis Johnson Jr. took over as president of the company. Then World War II broke out, and Willis Jr. joined the Navy. While he was away, his brother-in-law, Bill Powell, stepped in to run the company. In 1943, President Franklin D. Roosevelt appointed Willis Johnson Sr. to the National Office of Price and Administration. During this critical time in the nation's history, Johnson spent 2 years away from the company he founded, working for his country without pay. Over the years, the Willis Johnson Company continued to grow. In 1959, exactly 30 years after his father held the position, Willis Johnson Jr. was elected as chairman of the National Food Brokers Association. Like his father before him, Johnson was a well-respected leader with a vision of the big picture. Austin Bell joined the firm as a partner to Willis Johnson Jr., Bill Powell, and Bill's son, Peter Powell. Following in the footsteps of the founder and his son, Bell would also serve as chairman of the National Food Brokers Association one day. The fact that this small company based in Arkansas produced 3 industry leaders is indicative of the quality of their leadership and their strong attention to customer service.
It was a very small organization. It was called the Willis Johnson Company at that time. One of about 13, 14 businesses of its type in the market, in the Little Rock marketplace. And we were small. We had a lot of lines, but not a lot of revenue per line. And maybe 10 people total, 4 retail people. And my initial responsibilities were to manage the retail operations and to call on a major customer in the marketplace.
To my recollection, I think I was the 7th employee in 1964. And then Austin Bell came on board in 1972. And in the company was my dad and my uncle, Willis Johnson. And they exited in the late 70s.
At the same time that the Willis Johnson Company was growing, there were 2 other companies emerging during this period when the supermarket and the chain store were new concepts. Some call this 40-year period the golden age of the entrepreneur, as new brokerage companies were being formed in every city in America. 2 entrepreneurs who recognized the opportunities were Red Gordon and Bill Phillips. In 1944, Red Gordon founded the W.L. Gordon Company in Dallas, Texas. The the Gordon Company would prosper and eventually expand into New Mexico and Oklahoma. Soon, it had become a force to be reckoned with in the Southwest. In 1967, after two of the Gordon Company's key executives died in a tragic accident, Fred Arnold joined the company. Arnold led the Gordon Company through a period of explosive growth, from 32 employees in 1967 to more than 800 in 1996. Just like his industry colleagues at the Willis Johnson Company, Arnold would also serve as chairman of the National Food Brokers Association.
We had, at the time, about 32 employees. We represented 14 accounts. And Mr. Gordon was still alive. He died in 1969. That's when I became CEO. And we began to grow the business. We did very well. We were a good food broker, and there were about 35 in Dallas, but we were able to compete very effectively for new accounts and build our business. And then we got an opportunity. An old friend of mine from Houston called and said, you know, he was ready to retire and wanted to sell his business to us because he knew we'd be good to his employees and we'd pay him. So we were able to get that business down in Houston, and a short time later, Mark Murdoch out in West Texas, who really saw the vision of consolidation, that it was the coming thing. He was a little ahead of his time, really, but he merged with us. And then we got another call from Houston, from another old friend that wanted to sell a business, and we acquired that business. And then we acquired a couple businesses in San Antonio and became a statewide broker.
One of the keys to the Gordon Company's success was their innovative use of technology. For example, the company started putting computers in retail reps' hands to improve communication and eliminate paper. This was the birth of SalesTrack, a huge technological breakthrough in the industry. At the same time that the Gordon Company was expanding, another company was born that would one day become part of CROSSMARK's heritage. In 1953, Bill Phillips, another future chairman of the National Food Brokers Association, started a brokerage company at his kitchen table in Birmingham, Alabama.
My wife and I moved in with my mother and dad, and we took his breakfast room, which was a room probably 6 by 8 or 7 by 9 or something like that, and that was our first office. And we got some letters back from a few manufacturers, none of whom anybody ever heard of. But the first one we sold anything for was a private label packer of mayonnaise and salad dressings.
Throughout the 60s and 70s, these three companies, the Willis Johnson Company, the Gordon Company, and the Phillips Company, continued to prosper. But there was another company that started growing in the late 70s, which was headquartered in Arkansas, a new discount department store called Walmart. The Willis Johnson Company called on Sam Walton in 1977 and shared with him their plans to expand to confection, health, and beauty products. Soon afterwards, a client, Peter Paul Cadbury, had a problem with out-of-date product at Walmart stores. They hired Willis Johnson Company to visit stores across the U.S. and pick up the product. This retail force would eventually evolve into a division of the company known as Alpha One. Another watershed event happened in 1981 when Kroger consolidated the buying for Memphis, Tennessee and Little Rock, Arkansas. Recognizing that this was another opportunity, the company created a regional strategy and changed its name from the Willis Johnson Company to SalesMark. In order to be effective for their clients, companies across the nation were quickly consolidating in regions during the 80s. These regional companies would soon play an important part in the evolution of CROSSMARK. In the late 80s, Austin Bell attended a Walmart stockholders meeting in Bentonville. At the meeting, Sam Walton shared his plan to open 12 Walmart supercenters in the South and his desire for Walmart to become the largest food retailer in the U.S. At the time, there were over 50 brokers in the region. Only 2 of them saw the opportunity and seized it. SalesMark was one of them. The Gordon Company was the other. Over the next few years, SalesMark would be the first agency to offer clients coverage at Kmart, at Target, in drugstores, and in Canada. SalesMark created the industry's first dedicated team, as well as the first national retail merchandising team, which quickly grew from 14 territory sales managers to 1,300 within 8 months. The shot heard round the industry was fired in October of 1995 when CROSSMARK Alpha 1, the Gordon Company, and the Phillips Company announced that they were merging.